Welcome to another episode of Biz Takeouts, Biz Community Soundbite Science News to Go, made possible by the IIE Rosebank College, an educational brand of the Independent Institute of Education, or the IIE, dedicated to providing students with a solid foundation, creating future thinkers to build successful careers. I'm your host, Angie White, and today we welcome back Lillian Bususu, the Graduate Placement Manager at the IIE Rosebank College, who will be sharing some job interview hacks and tips with us. Hi, Lillian. Once again, welcome to the show.
Hi, Angie. Once again, it's always good to be on this platform. Thank you so much.
So, Lillian, picking up from the step of submitting a job application where we left off last time, what's next when it comes to being offered an interview for a job, and what goes into proper preparation for an interview?
Okay, Angie, before we actually go into the preparation of job interviews, I think we have to understand that there are many types of interviews that take place that employers are now using so that at least candidates are able to prepare themselves accordingly. So in fact, when a potential employer invites a candidate for any form of interview, it means that they were impressed by your CV or your cover letter, and now they want to get to know more about you. So this is something that you have to take very seriously, considering the many applications that employers receive on a daily basis. But you were picked, for further engagement, and depending on your presentation during an interview, at that level, you can actually, get the job. So it's very important to understand the many forms of interviews that actually take place, and it's also of paramount importance to inquire from your recruiter what type of job interview will be going for beforehand, before you even go for your interview, so that you can actually prepare for it thoroughly. And don't be afraid, because sometimes people are afraid to ask the recruiters what kind or type of job interview that will be conducted. But sometimes it also comes with your, invitation for that particular interview. So I'll go straight into the types of interviews and how you can actually prepare for them. So first of all, I'll start with the one that is very, where people actually sometimes don't take them seriously. These are telephonic interviews. And we're seeing more and more of these NG taking place, the telephonic interviews. And unfortunately, many people fail at this stage because sometimes they don't take this kind of interviews very seriously. Sometimes people just think, well, somebody's just calling me to find out if I'm looking for a job or whatever. But these are interviews. And sometimes you find that job seekers are actually very casual about telephonic interviews. And yet the decision to actually call you for a one-on-one or panel interview or whatever other interviews, it's actually based on how you've actually conducted yourself in a telephonic interview. So with telephonic interviews, you will be asked typical questions sometimes or behavioral questions, and it's very important to actually do, you show them that the best of who you are, even if it's over the phone. So that's one type of interviews that that are there. Then we have your traditional one-on-one job interviews. And these are interviews where a potential employer will invite the candidate to their offices or wherever to meet up with them. And this kind of interviews, most likely it's by the line manager or the manager of that position that you're applying for. And they are the ones who actually conduct these interviews. And if, let's say, you get that job, you will be working with that person directly. So he or she will want to get a feel of who you are and if your skills actually match those of the job requirements. So that's your traditional, face-to-face interview. Then we have what we call panel interviews. In a panel interview, the candidate is interviewed by a panel of interviewers, and the panel may consist of different representatives of that organization, such as human resources or sometimes management or even line managers, the managers that you're actually going to be working with. And the reason why some companies conduct panel interviews is to save time or to get the collective opinion of panels regarding that candidate. So each member of the panel may be responsible for asking certain questions that will represent relevancy from their position. And each of them, in a panel interview, each of them will then rate your performance in the interview, and they all contribute to the decision whether to hire you or not. And then we are also seeing more and more of virtual interviews. These are more or less like your face-to-face, because yes, you are face-to-face, but you are using technology like video conferencing or any other online communication platforms. So virtual interviews are often conducted much the same way as face-to-face interviews. So they should be taken seriously as if you are being interviewed face-to-face. It may be virtual, but you are seeing those people. They can see you, through technology. And then we have what we call group interviews. These are quite dangerous because you'll be thinking, I'm hiding, under other people. But with group interviews, you are interacting with other candidates, and there will be tasks that you'll be assessed on. And during this kind of interview, the employer is actually observing how you interact with the other candidates. Are you emerging as a leader, or are you more likely to complete the tasks that they will ask you? And all they do is to actually observe how you are conducting yourself within a group setup. And then the last but not least is psychometric assessment interviews. These are also part of interviews, and I find more and more people are getting so scared of, psychometric interviews. These interviews are actually conducted before. Sometimes you find that before you're even called for an interview, they do the interviews. And why companies do this kind of interviews is actually to measure a person's suitability for, based on their intellectual capabilities. So that's why some interviews. And companies believe that by giving candidates a standardized test, it can actually provide an objective assessment of who the most suitable candidate is. So people mustn't be, what have you got to lose? You just go for that psychometric test. It's either you're the right fit, or you're not. And then we can actually move on from there. So to answer your questions, in all these interviews, Angie, it is very important that one takes them very seriously and prepare accordingly. Because as you go from one stage to the other, it's because you've actually passed that particular stage. So it's important that we do a lot of preparation in every one of those job interviews. And it's important to answer the questions professionally, and especially with telephonic interviews, you need to have that telephone etiquette. It is required than to answer phones. A lot of people, companies call with private lines, and you find a candidate saying private hello, or answering in such a way that puts off the potential employer. So with telephonic interviews, make sure you're in a quiet space with no interruptions. You need to exude that confidence with enthusiasm, and also have a smile in your voice. Have a smile on your face on the other side. And then with face-to-face or panel or virtual interviews, please make sure that you have the right names and the titles of the people that will be interviewing you. It's important to actually do your research thoroughly. And you need to review, in all these interviews, review the job description, get to know what they are looking for. And also it's important to get the salary package to see if it's in line with what you're looking for. Dress up for it. You need to have a good background. Dress up for it, look the part. And if it's face-to-face where you have to visit an office, you need to plan your journey. You need to plan for the interview. So you need to do it before, the day before, not on the day that you're required to attend the interview, because, life happens, and you may find that you are supposed to take maybe 3-4 taxis, or maybe you require a lot of money to put petrol in your car. So it's important to actually prepare the day before, and then also prepare the questions that you want to ask the potential employer. Prepare those questions beforehand. And all I can say is, in your preparation as well, know your story. Bring your A game. You've got to know who you are, because remember, the people that are sitting on the other side want to know if they're able to work with you. So you need to bring in your A game, and you need to give them who you are, and you need to know your story. So as far as preparation is concerned, that's all I have to say. And also, I think, Angie, with psychometric tests, you have to make sure that you answer truthfully, because these kind of interviews have a way of catching you out if you are lying, and unfortunately you then disqualify yourself in the process. So that's what I can say in terms of preparing yourself for any form of interview that you're actually called for.
Sure, definitely some good advice there, Lillian. Definitely some good coaching involved. And talking about the actual interview now, what are some common interview questions that can be expected?
Oh, there's a lot that can be expected, especially the one that that talks about give us a brief of who you are. Who are you? They can ask it in many forms. They can say, who is Angie? Who is Lillian? Basically they're saying the same thing. All they're saying is, who are you? Please tell us who you are. But there's also that basic information on your CV. You've got to know your story. That information is very important, that it's done truthfully, and you know your story. So those kind of questions, the basic information on your CV. So you've got to know the story that is actually on your CV. And then the other questions is behavioral questions. This is about discovering how the candidate will act in specific scenarios based on their previous experience. So in behavioral questions, you expect questions like, tell me a time when you handled a challenging situation. Tell me about a time when you made a mistake. Tell me about a time when you were not in agreement with your boss, or tell me about a time when you were in conflict with a peer, and how was that situation resolved. So the interviewer, what they're trying to understand is your behavior in different scenarios presented to you in the past. So you've got to gather some of that information, so that at least you can tell them. And they also want to know your strengths and your weaknesses. So I mean, this is what makes you shine. There's no way that you're being interviewed, you don't know your strengths, or you start thinking about, oh, I think. When they ask you about your strengths, it's about what makes you shine, and this is something that is at the tip of your finger, of your mouth, and your weaknesses as well. And we find a lot of people sometimes, when they are answering the question of weaknesses, it's what they want to present, what the interviewer wants to hear. Weaknesses is about what is it that you're struggling with, or what were you struggling with, and what is it that you need, what you're doing to actually overcome that weakness. So, and other questions will be, why do you want to leave your current employer, or why do you leave your current your employer? And make sure you're not negative, or you portray the previous employer in a bad light, because interviewers will see you as a very negative person. And then also questions that you may be asked is about the gaps that are on your CV. So if there's any gaps on your CV, employers, they want to know what you were up to during that time. So you've got to know your story. You've got to cover those gaps on what you were actually doing. And then obviously sometimes they will ask you, the outside the box interview questions like, what's happening currently, or what are your thoughts, with what is happening in the current affairs, or they will ask you your thoughts on a particular story of interest or anything. So you've got to know your current affairs on what is happening. And they will sometimes ask you your salary expectations. And this question, many people actually fail on this question because some people answer it wishy-washy. You have to make sure that you've done a thorough market research on what their offer is all about, and make sure that you're actually within the brackets of what they are looking for, so that when you go, you do your presentation as far as what your expectations are, and you are within that bracket. Lastly, sometimes, interviewers want to know if there's any information that you feel they need to know beforehand, like, are you a criminal, or other things, like if there's any criminal record. Sometimes they ask it in such a way that it may pass you. Sometimes they'll say, do you think there's any information that you think you need to tell us that we've not asked you? So you need to really, if there's anything that they need to know beforehand, this is where you're truthful about it. If there's any criminal record, or if there's anything, if they do an MIE check on you, that they will find out. It's important to actually give them beforehand. So those are some of the typical questions that I've mentioned that they will ask when you actually go for an interview. Obviously, there's also those other technical questions, the questions that has to do with the job that you're actually going into, and you've got to know your story as well. Yeah.
Yeah, some of those it's been a while, but some of them ringing a bell. And then, are there any topics that should be avoided when someone is doing an interview?
Yeah, there's quite a lot that need to be avoided. Things like politics or personal things. Like sometimes you find in interview we're talking about, oh, Angie, you're so beautiful. Those personal stuff, religion things, and leave them out. Those are some of the things that we shouldn't actually bring to an interview, or being over familiar with the fact they are laughing, no matter how much they are becoming friendly with you. You must draw the line to actually say, these are some of the things that I cannot go beyond. So there are things like your personal things, things like your sports, religion. Try and avoid some questions, or to have that sort of like interaction with them. And you can do so by, maybe saying I'm uncomfortable, or you can say a little bit that but don't get into an argument with them, because that can be quite sensitive, to the person that is actually interviewing you.
So the next question, Lillian, how does an interviewee ensure that they stand out to a potential employer?
And firstly, preparation is very important. The interviewer can actually tell when a candidate has or has not prepared themselves for the interview. It is so easy to tell, by the way you're actually going to answer the questions, and how you present yourself. So I'll start by first things first. The most important thing is dress for the occasion. If it's a panel interview, on one, if it's a virtual, dress for the occasion. Make sure that you actually look the part. And sometimes it's important to find out from an organization what sort of dressing, because if it's, let's say, your performance arts, and all that, maybe you don't need to dress in a suit and all that. But when it's, maybe formal jobs, then you need to dress in a suit or very formal. So you need to know exactly, the kind of dressing that you need to do. So that's number one. You need to dress the part, and then research about the company. The interviewer can actually see that you have not researched anything, and there's nothing as annoying as having a candidate that is sitting there and they ask you a question, how much do you know about this company, and you know nothing. It's not, it doesn't look good on your side. You've already disqualified yourself, because if you don't know about the company, and this information is everywhere. I mean, it's on the net. You can Google, you can research, you can call the company to find out more, about it. And then know your story, know who you are. It's important to know your story and to know who you are, because if you don't know who you are, it's very difficult for the other side to know you, because you are coming for an interview to present yourself, to showcase who you are. And if you don't know who you are, it's very difficult for us to get to know you. And you need to showcase your strengths, and you describe your accomplishments as well. If you've got anything that you've accomplished in your past life, it's important to actually bring it to the table, so that the interviewer can actually know some of the accomplishments you have achieved in the past. And if you have any samples, of previous projects, you need to bring them to the table as well. Give them that evidence that, yes, I have achieved A, B, C, D, and this is my evidence. And one of the things I just want to say, it's annoying when an interviewee comes late for an interview. You need to arrive on time, arrive early on time, and be there on time. I always say at least be there maybe 15 minutes before, so that you can get to see what is happening in that company, who is who, and if there's any questions maybe that you need to ask the receptionist, then you've got that time to actually do it, and you even have time to actually go to the bathroom to just now, prepare yourself again, just to put a bit of lipstick, or to put Vaseline on your lips, whatever you want to do, you can actually do it at that time, rather than coming, in a rush. And then during the interview, you need to ask unique questions. It's important to ask questions that are unique. You don't ask questions that the interviewee thinks you know about, things that are on the public platforms, things that are on their website. You can't ask questions like that. I always say, don't borrow my watch to tell me the time. So in other words, don't tell me what I already know. Don't ask them questions that they expect you to know. Ask genuine, relevant questions. And also, Angie, if you do not have any questions to ask, it's okay. Because some people believe they honestly have to have questions to ask. If everything has been answered in that interview, that's okay. You don't have to ask any questions. Don't feel obligated that you need to ask any questions. And lastly, bring your A game. It's important to bring in your A game, be enthusiastic, be present, show them that you appreciate the opportunity, and you also want there for that interview. There's nothing as annoying interviewing somebody who is actually showing through their body language that they don't want to be in this interview. So you bring in your A game, show them I want to be here, and you appreciate that opportunity. That's all I can say in terms of how you can really be that better candidate in an interview.
All excellent advice, and I agree with it completely. And then lastly, Lillian, do you have any more advice, tips, or hacks that we haven't touched on?
Well, you know what? I think I'm just going to emphasize on a few points, but I just want to end by emphasizing on a few points that if you get the opportunity to be interviewed, you must leave that interviewer saying, I would like to work with this person, or this person may not be the right fit for what I'm looking for, but this person can be an asset in this organization. That's the feeling that you must have when you leave that interview. And that's a lot of preparation that you need to do. But I'm going to emphasize about studying the job description so that you go knowing exactly what they're looking for. You review your major projects that you've worked on and highlight your successes. Bring your successes to the table and revisit your previous job performance reviews. You know, we all have job performance reviews. Bring them, especially if you were an A plus, you know, type of a performer. Bring that. If you're a star, bring that, and make a list of your professional accomplishments. Bring them to the table as well, and be honest in your answering. Be honest, be sincere, and be genuine. But I think lastly, I just want to say, practice, practice, practice. Practice is very important. And you may get somebody that you can do a role play, you know, that, you know, they interview you, and that way you are making yourself, you know, to get to be comfortable when you actually go for the actual interview. So doing that, practice. They say practice makes perfect. But lastly, I just want to say, don't waste any opportunity because you did not adequately prepare for it. You would rather be prepared for an opportunity which is not there, and than to have an opportunity and you're actually not prepared for it. So preparation, preparation, preparation is very important when you are attending any form of interviews. Yeah.
I love that. Definitely not a time to pass up any opportunity. So great advice. Well, that brings us to the end of another show, Lillian. Okay, with thanks to the IIE Rosebank College for making it possible. It's Biz Takeouts. Take it where you like it, when you like it. Until next time.